Hello, and welcome to another franchising session with FASA. I'm Romany Thresher, and joining us today, our guest is Genevieve Allen, who is the Managing Director for Sherpa Kids. Hello, Genevieve, and how are you?
Hi, good morning. Lovely to be here today. I'm actually sitting in the beautiful Kudu Private Nature Reserve in Lydenburg, so leveraging the benefits of the fact that we can now do our interprovincial travel. Very exciting.
That's very, very exciting. I just want to say a warm welcome to everyone out there who's watching this. If you'll be watching this, please hit the like and share button. Share it with friends and family who you think would be interested in franchising and franchise opportunities. We always want to lend a helping hand, especially in tough times like these. I just want to give a bit of background. Genevieve Atkins has 25 years experience in the listed general retail sector, and was primarily engaged in education management, general management, business development, operations, and marketing. Genevieve launched Sherpa Kids into South Africa. The brand started in New Zealand in 1996 and operates in over 200 primary schools in New Zealand, Australia, England, Ireland, and Canada, and is reshaping South African parents' view on what out of school hours looks like. Traditionally, aftercare in the primary school sector in South Africa has been a low-value babysitting service, providing little more than very basic safety and care services. The franchise was awarded by FASA in 2015 and 2016, the Newcomer Franchise of the Year finalist and finalist in Leading Development Emerging Entrepreneurs Award. Sherpa Kids has is SASA membership and is rated a top 5 school service provider by School Advisor, off a base of 800 school-focused service providers. Since launching in 2014, there are now 33 franchisees, and Genevieve runs over 60 sites across all across South Africa, and Sherpa Kids connects with over 5,000 families and is growing rapidly within South Africa. So grab a cup of coffee, and in a moment we'll be chatting with Genevieve Allen of Sherpa Kids. Thank you, everyone. So hello, welcome back to Franchising with FASA, which is a non-profit organization. Franchise businesses who are members of FASA have agreed to follow a code of conduct of ethics and are in support of ethical business and ethical franchising. So just another reminder to everyone, please hit the like and share button. Please share this with people who you feel would be interested in business opportunities, looking for something in franchising and wanting to be part of the team. So let's head over and chat with Genevieve about the child working from home and how this has changed the childcare sector. It's a new normal. Kids are at home, parents are at home, and how this impacted working mothers and in particular parents in general. So what I just want to ask you, starting off, is I can imagine that women have had a lot of responsibilities with caring for child and raising children, but I can't imagine that now having to work from home and having children at home at the same time must have an enormous impact on that industry. So can you tell us a little bit about that, Genevieve?
Sure. I think that this has been an incredibly tough and challenging time for working families, specifically single moms, but even families where both the mom and dad are working. And to be frank, even moms who were traditionally stay-at-home moms, who've had their children and their husbands at home all the time with them, something that's a different paradigm. So I think we've seen, in terms of specific market trends, we've seen a huge upswing into online schooling. So a lot of parents have taken the experiment that they had with their school trying out online schooling to now make the decision that they're going to put their children into online schooling on a more long-term basis. And that, I think, for many childcare franchise businesses means that they need to start thinking about how they're going to redevelop their business models. So if you were running a typical extramural franchise where you were doing ball skills or chess skills or dancing, music, etc., and you were coming into the school environment, and your clients have now opted to go in an online environment. We need to be rethinking our models. And in our type of business, where we focus more on, let's say, holistic childcare, not a specific extramural, we've had to start thinking about how are we going to support these working families where our moms are basically at the moment being expected to take the childcare role while juggling very busy, intensive jobs. And what we're finding in the commentary from our mothers that we're chatting to is they are not getting a break. So typically, when you were holding down a job, you would get in your car and you would drive to work, and that 20 or 30 or 40 minutes of driving was some downtime and resetting for the day. And people often used to talk about the second shift between work and home and that opportunity to just decompress. And we're seeing that our moms are not getting that time out. And I think that there's major business opportunities to play in that space, to create support structures for working mothers, because what our current trends are that people are working from home, they have Zoom fatigue from sitting on online meetings all day, and then they roll from that into binge watching TV. So when you start thinking about that, what are the opportunities for businesses that focus in outdoor, in nature, in fresh air, in tactile games, etc. So we're definitely looking at redeveloping elements of our business, and I'm sure many of the other FASA members who operate in the childcare space are having to redesign what they do. So I think that sounds all around, because we're talking about this new normal, but we don't actually know what it looks like.
Yeah, no, absolutely we don't. And I think this is kind of new territory. And, you know, I'm a very big fan of working from home because to me it does add hours and it does change the dynamic. But just listening to what you're saying to me, just kind of think to myself, sure, you know, the moms really don't have a break. And how can we as family structures perhaps really look at the situation and see how we can fit in or how we can help out, especially in those, you know, friends who maybe don't have children, or friends who perhaps don't have that much of enormous responsibility, maybe just giving your friend a bit of an afternoon time out looking after the kids. Because I know, I mean, as it is, I mean, a friend of mine who doesn't have kids, she's working in the corporate world and she's finding that what's changed for her is that the time end of the day doesn't finish at 5 o'clock. So she's still working till 7 o'clock at night. And so when do you actually get time to do anything really? I mean, even to sit with your kids and do homework, or to sit with your kids and teach them how to do things. So I can imagine this has really been quite an exhausting time for a lot of people. How can we change that dynamic? Perhaps fathers, you know, fathers need to also step in, because I also think that women have a tendency to go home, you know, to bed and thinking, have I fed the kids? Have I put them in bed? You know, is this going on? That's kind of what I'm sensing when I chat with my friends who have children. So yeah, maybe that.
Yeah, I always talk about the juggle is real, you know, not the struggle, it's the juggle. And it really, I think for moms, it is that. There's a lot of research coming out of the major research houses and the universities talking about the fact that people are working much longer hours over this period. So that time that you were usually spending traveling, you're working. So people are starting at 7 o'clock. And they, as you said rightly, they're carrying on for 6 or 7. And remember that in a normal working environment, you will stop for a break. You'll have a coffee. You'll go to down the passage to go to the loo and chat to someone. You'll stop at someone's desk. That's not happening when people are working from home. They are literally sitting at their desks all day long. They're not pausing. And if you think about how we set up our meeting calendars now, we are backing meetings right on top of one another. We used to build in time for travel. We used to build in time for packing up your desk, putting your laptop in the laptop bag, walking down to the office. All of that was built in. Now the expectation is that you just work. And somewhere in between that, you're also supposed to be guiding and supporting your children who are now working from home as well. And I think what's important for parents is, as much as we know this, we don't always internalize it. You need to set an example for your kids as well. that you taking time out to have lunch with your kids or play with them in the garden as part of the day, very important. Or you driving a message with your children that the only way to be successful is to be working all the time and there is nothing else to life.
Yeah, no, that's not on. That's not on. And I'm listening to what you're saying there, and it's interesting because I've been working from home for many, many years, and so for me, it's kind of like I'm used to, I switch off at specific times or I make those back, So it's almost like we have to work now with company owners. We have to speak to the leaders and really say, you know what, set those times. If the end time was 5 o'clock, don't be sending your staff emails after 5. Let's help the situation. Let's not set up those meetings because, just listening to you and saying, people got used to, I've been doing that for such a long time. I didn't even know it was a problem now that I'm beginning to see, just amongst my friends, my colleagues. And that, like you said, back-to-back meetings. And instead of cutting off at 5 o'clock and saying, okay, let's take that time out to go to gym or let's take that time out to go to exercise, instead it's being replaced by more and more work. And that's not a healthy environment to be in. You can't be working healthily that way. Can you tell me?
It's based on fear.
Yeah.
I'm worried my company is going to close down. I'm worried I'm going to. So you're not working more because you're trying to achieve more in your career. There's a lot of it's based on fear, and that's a very bad place that's coming from a psychological stress perspective,
Yeah, no, it is. It's coming from a place of, there's so many people out there that will have my job, or it's fear of losing your job. So yes, and that's not always a good way to work with things. It doesn't have a good energy with that. I agree with you.
And that's why we support the franchise model, where people can have independent income, set up their own businesses, be a lot more in control of their destiny, and move away from that slave to your job mindset.
I like that. I agree. I think we need to move more into that work from home, work for yourself, self-employed, so that you have more control over your own time. And that is what's been fortunate for me working for myself as a self-employed, is that I am in control with my own time. I can dedicate and set times to how I want to do things. So I do like that. Can you tell us, Genevieve, what is hybrid schooling and how has moving online impacted schooling?
Okay, so hybrid schooling is where children are doing a blend of online and in classroom. So what we're seeing with traditional schools is that some schools have brought all the children back into the classroom. The public schools specifically are working on what they call platooning. So they've split the children into 2 groups, and group A come Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and group B come Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then they rotate. So children are coming to school every second day, and every second day they're at home. And then they need to be working on their projects and going through their schoolwork. So that's one form of hybrid learning. The other form of hybrid learning is people who've made the decision for their children to go into the 100% online environment, but they want some level of blended support. So they would be attending a tutorial center, where they actually can engage with other children. So I think what's quite interesting over the last year is that homeschooling has been growing in South Africa over the last 10 or 15 years. There's been a big movement towards homeschooling, but in some communities, homeschooling was seen as quite on the fringe, something that only certain communities would do, in terms of that they lived far from a local school, or they specifically wanted to focus their children around a specific ethos. And now we're seeing with online, many tens of thousands of children engaged in online schooling. And I think I've been running a series of focus groups over the last 8 weeks, working with parents and getting their insights. And many parents have enjoyed the fact that their children have become more independent and self-selecting. So in other words, when they decide that they want to do an extramural, like let's say an online karate class, the child is choosing the activity as opposed to the school has set up an extramural calendar. And whether you like it or not, you're going to cricket, you're going to athletics, you're going to swimming. And it's kind of like you're fitting in with the routine that the school sets. So parents are really enjoying this, because obviously this speaks very strongly to our current new generations that are coming through, and that these children are much more independent in their thinking. and are not going to allow themselves to be part of the kind of factory mentality that we see old school schooling. But that puts businesses under enormous pressure because many of us are still offering what we've been offering for the last 20 years, and now the client base has changed and very quickly. So we've really got to innovate and understand what our clients are looking for. So yeah, there's a lot of movement in that space. And, education, they say that education and medicine are the two sectors that are going to be the most affected by changes in technology. And this shift that's come with the pandemic is allowing education to really be radically changed. So I think for every individual that's involved in the education industry, you need to be sitting back and thinking about how these clients have changed and that the children are part of the client base, not just the parents.
That is true. That is true. And it's kind of like when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking lots more opportunities. So, it's about time that the education sector was ruffled, because what was done before and taught before was not really in sync with what was coming in the future. I mean, this whole world is turning upside down. It's been changed inside out. And I think there's a whole large portion of the population globally that has no concept of what is happening. I mean, everyone's got this idea, but when you start looking into the trends of the future, how technology, robotics, all those things online will become more profound. So I agree with you. I think a lot of people, even if they're not in the education sector, should be reassessing and looking at the current situation and how can they reposition themselves or adapt. It's no point putting your head in the sand and saying, well, I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing for the last 10 years, because that is no longer what it is going forward.
Yeah, and I'm really excited because in our business, when we think aftercare, typically when I talk to parents, they have quite limited, let's say, range of expectations. Are you supervising my child's homework? What is my child going to eat for lunch? And are you going to ensure that my child is safe and secure so that when I come and collect them, they are where I expect them to be? Okay, so that was typically what parents are looking for. And I think that that's quite mundane. It's a babysitting environment. What we want to be doing is actively engaging in development of children, in their skills and their talents. And I mean, I'm so excited that we're going to be able to engage in these conversations with parents about talent enhancement as opposed to homework, which quite frankly is quite passé. I mean, we are seeing many schools moving out of the whole notion of homework and allowing children rather to work on projects where they can develop a strong worldview of the world around them. Not just repeat what they heard in the classroom this morning. Very old-fashioned.
Yeah, no. I like that. I tell you what, I definitely was meant to be born in today's world, I love online, I love staying at home, that kind of thing. Now, ECD centers must also be under a lot of pressure. How has the industry responded?
Yeah, so the early childhood development center, so that typically what we would think of as a nursery school, a baby center, creche. So, all of the centers that are serving children before they enter traditional primary school have quite frankly been decimated this year. There's been very low level of support from the state. So while the primary schools and high schools have been, and the universities have been really well supported in terms of like resources on PPE, on training, on online, the early childhood sector has basically been left to fend for itself. And it's actually quite a travesty. If you look at the sector, it's predominantly small independent businesses run by women. They're operating out of townships in rural areas, running little baby daycare centers or nursery schools, and they've just been left to fend for themselves. And remember that as people work from home and or lose their jobs, they're not sending their children to a third party for care. So there's hundreds of thousands of people who've lost their jobs in that sector, and it's really been quite a travesty that a sector of our society, which is entrusted to look after our most vulnerable children under 6 has been left to fend for itself. So yeah, this has been, I would say, in terms of COVID management strategy from the government, one of the worst run elements is having left those independent providers to basically fend for themselves. There are now some state grants that have been made available, etc., but it took a long time, and it took a private court case to get that right. So it wasn't a state-endorsed support from the beginning. So I just think that, what's happened is, because it's a sector run by small independent businesses, it doesn't have a big corporate player in that space. They were just forgotten.
That's really, really sad, because, on research, it's you between the ages of 0, from when you're born to the age of 7, you're operating in the subconscious mind frame. And so those are your very most important equipment years, your development years. And so whatever you do between the ages from birth to 7 is what kind of determines your behavior patterns, everything going forward into your life. So they're quite crucial and important. It's a very important sector if you think about it.
Very. And I mean, also we live in a country where we talk a lot about activism on gender-based violence and on ensuring that our vulnerable children are not exposed in terms of, criminal activity, etc. And yet we've left this environment unfettered. It's really been a tragedy in terms of, and like I'm saying, because there are no corporate players in that space, no attention. When you've got a big player, they've got the power to lobby with government to ensure that they're well looked after. So, yeah, I just think that we are going to feel the impact of that for many years to come, because, again, these are predominantly service providers serving very vulnerable parts of our communities. Now, I'm not talking about, the nursery school in the middle of Bryanston, but having said that, even those operators have taken enormous hits this year, because between fear and finances, people have pulled their children out of nursery schools at an unrelenting pace. So most of those environments are currently operating with under 10% of their headcount.
Sure, that's quite
and
something.
You can't service your salaries and your rent on 10% of your headcount.
No, you can't. Wow, that's quite people don't realize that there's always a knock-on effect to everything. It's not just that company that's being affected, it's the knock-on effect of all the other suppliers and the other providers. So let's have a quick chat about Sherpa Kids. So tell us, who is it best suited for?
As a franchise operator, what I really look for is a mom who has a very strong understanding of the importance of out-of-school hours care. So that would typically be a mom who's had experiences in terms of their own child attending an aftercare centre, and to be quite frank, often they've had a poor experience, and that's why they want to get involved in a much more professional outfit. So I don't typically recruit ex-teachers. I have got 1 or 2 ex-teachers in my franchise pool, but my typical would be a business professional. So I've got chartered accountants, engineers, lawyers, psychologists, so professional women who are looking to get involved in an industry that is really about community development. But I also am looking for someone that's quite savvy. This is not an easy business to run. You are working with people's children. So you need to have, I want to say, your head screwed on properly, because this is a huge level of responsibility in terms of looking after people's children. And we operate inside school property. So you're a third-party sublet provider, which means you have to have excellent relationship management skills, communication, client care, but fundamental passion for working with children. I mean, this is what you're going to do. So it has to be something that really ticks a box for you. And I can tell you that I often meet people who, once I chat to them about a day in the life of a franchisee, they're like, thanks, no thanks.
Yeah, no, sometimes people think it's an easy thing. It's not. There's always, you have to put time and effort into everything that you do. There's a lot of responsibility. And as you say, I mean, we've got to raise responsible adults. That's where you're at. I mean, you're kind of in the business of raising responsible adults. So yes, it means that the people that you bring into the business must have that same kind of, ethos or belief system. So can you tell us what is the training? Do you offer training, and how long does that work? What does that look like?
Yeah, we split our training into two components. One is when a franchisee starts with us, they will do the typical training around business operations, business administration, business development, our quality assurance model and how it operates. And then they will also do some work around becoming certified in terms of pediatric CPR, so their first aid training. And then the second part of the training is on the ground. So in the center, the day-to-day running of the operations, but in parallel, also the business development and sustainability elements in terms of making sure that the business grows. So our training in the initial stage is a week, which we would normally split over 3 weeks. So I don't believe in doing the whole week in one go. I think it's information overload. So we would typically take that week's training and split it over 2 to 3 weeks of mornings or afternoons and some weekends and a bit of a mixed bag. And then the on the ground would be another week or two, dependent on the background of the person we're working with. So we also tailor our training. And then we have an online training platform called Intuto, which our franchisees and their staff are able to access. We've got about 40 courses, which we use for continuous professional development. So these will be things like refresher training around some of the operational procedures. We've obviously this year had to set up a whole module on COVID protocols and how to manage COVID within our environments. But then also some things about socio-emotional wellness. A big topic for us this year has been mental well-being for children. So those types of new hot topics we drive through our e-learning platform, and that allows a focus on continuous professional development.
That sounds good. It sounds good. It's almost like you get a lot more than just training kids or setting kids up. So I see we've run out of time here. Just one last question. What and faster membership? What does that mean for kids? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it has been very critical for us. I mean, first of all, at a let's say the most base level, because our franchise comes from Australia and New Zealand, it's very important for the New Zealand and Australian owners to have a sense that we are guided by the core principles of FASA. So they are very active members in the franchise associations in the countries that this franchise comes from. And Australia specifically, like the US, are leaders in the franchise sector. So it's very important that we have that strong connection. I'm a big believer that this also allows our franchisees to have a sense of confidence. They know that we're working with the leading association in the country. And to be quite frank, Romney, in the event of a dispute, we would have a process for disputes to be managed as opposed to lawyers' letters flying around. So for me, it's the good stuff in terms of the guiding principles and being involved at the industry association level and the networking and the leading edge. But then on the other side, in the very practical operational, it's the sounding board and the guiding principles that enable us to run a business bigger than the business we are, because we're part of a big association.
And Genevieve, any final thoughts before we close?
No, I mean, thank you very much for the time. I've enjoyed chatting to you, and I think that this is a hot topic. I'm sure we'll revisit it again, because it's certainly a moving target. And I'm happy for anyone that wants to reach out and have a chat with me. All of my information is on our website, so you'll find it exactly as our name, Sherpa Kids. And I'm happy to sit and chat to anybody. And of course, we are open for holiday clubs at the moment. So anyone who's looking for a holiday club for the kiddie at home, you're welcome to reach out and we can assist you. We have branches all around the country, and we are quite busy with our holiday clubs at the moment.
That sounds interesting, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. And absolutely, if you'd like to get hold of Genevieve and find out more about franchise opportunities, or even the holiday clubs, we will be posting a link in the comment box below so that you can just send them a message and get in touch with Genevieve. So thank you everyone once again for watching, and remember to please hit the like and share button, share it with people who you feel will be interested in franchise opportunities. It always does help us, especially with the new algorithms and the new robots. And then, it was a great talk today because it gives one the sense of a thought that, there are opportunities out there, that even if you've been caught in a situation where you feel you've been made unemployed or things are just been turned upside down, there's a load of new opportunities about to come our way, things that we can think of, franchise opportunities. Look at Sherpa Kids, see what they have to offer, have a chat with them. You never know what could transpire. And so in closing, FAST is a non-profit organization that protects, lobbies and promotes and develops ethical franchising across all sectors within South Africa, with a specific focus on transformation. FAST offers membership to franchisors and franchisees, and also to suppliers who are in support and run ethical businesses. If you'd like to know more about membership and what FAST does, you can contact them at www.fast.co.za. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Have a super week further, whatever it is you're doing.